What is up, guys? The Strong Boys 19 here. So it is now the time to return back to the discography of one of my top favorite bands of all time, and that is the Rolling Stones. As you can see, I'm not wearing a Rolling Stones t-shirt. Well, I just decided to stop that entirely because I've been doing so many different reviews by wearing a totally different shirt or just a different band shirt than wearing a band shirt of a band that I talk about with an album in a video. So, I just thought I'd just wear whatever I want when I do a review. Anyways, it is time to go back into the Stones discography, and I'm going to be diving into the new decade at the time for the band with this album entitled Emotional Rescue. Emotional Rescue is the first album in the 1980s, and out of all of these albums that had been released, I personally feel that this was the most underappreciated and underrated era of the Rolling Stones, because there were a few albums after this and Tattoo You that were not as very well received and as praised as albums before and after the 1980s era of the Stones. Here are some facts about this album. Emotional Rescue is the 15th studio album by the Rolling Stones. It was released on the 20th of June 1980, so a new decade after the 70s period, after many releases with Mick Taylor, with albums from Let It Bleed to It's Only Rock and Roll. This is the follow-up to 1978's Some Girls, which was the second album to feature Ronnie Wood as the latest replacement after Mick Taylor's departure. The music to this album continues the inspiration of the disco music scene, although the rock and blues music is still present in the songwriting. This was produced by Jagger and Richards under the name The Glimmer Twins on the Rolling Stones Records label, and this was the first Stones record after Keith Richards' drug bust in Toronto that could have landed him in prison. Most of this album's material had been written for more than 10 tracks, and the songs that were left off were chosen for the next album, Tattoo You, in 1981. The album spawned 2 singles, the title track on the same date of the album's release, and She's So Cold / Send It To Me on the 22nd of September 1980. To be quite honest, I feel that Emotional Rescue is one of these albums that really didn't deserve some of the poor reception and bit of the negativity. Of course, it isn't like the classic albums from the 70s period, but I think that Emotional Rescue is seriously one of those criminally underappreciated Stones records that I really got to enjoy even more over time. And I feel that this is one of those Stones records that deserves some more of the support and the attention than just diving into the obvious same classic records. So I think it is still a big move that the Stones are still expanding their sounds in different ways, from the production to the songwriting and the influences they had from the past to this very day. Anyways, let's go into the opinions that I have on most of the tracks. Dance Part 1 is the disco-inspired piece of music that is pretty much similar to the opening track of Some Girls Miss You, and I really like this one. It's got a great beat, some funky guitar playing, as it feels great as the opening track to start the whole thing off, with the saxophones and backing vocals in the background that blend the whole track musically very nicely. Summer Romance, a quicker speed and a rockier edge, and it's got the effective playing style. This continues the rock and roll inspired music with very good lead guitar work from Ronnie Wood, which I think that he's one of those underrated lead guitarists. and some of the bass lines to this track were very controlled. Brings the playing from Bill Wyman's skills up a notch. Send It To Me is the only song that is very reggae sounding in my eyes. Rhythm was very tight from the guitars and the tone was very well executed. I personally feel that this was a much better fitting and less loose piece of music than the reggae attempts from their album Black and Blue. As with the lyrics go, it was inspired from a lonely man looking for a mail-order bride, and that's what Jagger had in mind for the lyrics. Indian Girl is to me the most unusual track. What I mean by it is that this song is very country ballad-esque. I really do like the instrumentation to it, but then as the track goes on, it switches to involvement with a string synthesizer in the instrumentation besides the pedal steel guitars again to continue the country sound. I do like this track and I like the vocal performances from Jagger as well. Down in the Hole for me is the weakest song on the record and it is very bluesy, stars Sugar Blue on the harmonica, pretty bland, and it doesn't really connect with me. Doesn't do anything for me as much as the earlier bluesy orienting tracks from some of the Stones records like Exile on Main Street, for example. The title track, Emotional Rescue, a simple hook that fits, and with the combination of Jagger's falsetto high-pitched vocals, saxophone from Bobby Keys was excellent, and the beat is like Miss You, like on Dance Part 1 as well. There is some more involvement on the synthesizers, plus the electric piano that remains consistent on the whole song. And lyrically, this was based on, according to Jagger's words, a girl who's in some sort of manhood problems. Not that she was going crazy, but she's just a little bit screwed up, and he wants to be the one to help her out. But other than that, it is one of my favourite singles from the Stones. Amazing sound and beats. She's So Cold, being the second single, was not a favourite for me either. Poppy based with pretty good bass lines, but I feel the lyrics to be really generic and repetitively weak as it goes along. It's not as strong as Emotional Rescue, but I respect the success of the single. It was not really one of those singles that I look out to as one of the best ever Stones singles. All About You is a song that features Keith Richards for the only time on lead vocals to this album as the closing track, and the guitar is swirling around with its heavy phaser effect, and the vocals sounded pretty solid and good from his vibrato and tone. It is a gentle, slower paced song with pianos in the mix and the saxophones that flow with the music and the mood. And I think it is a very good little closing track to finish off this album. It's really underrated. Keith did make tracks that are some classics earlier on, like Happy to You've Got the Silver, but I really do like this track as it personally connects with the rest of the album in my words. That is really it, guys. Emotional Rescue by the Rolling Stones is, for me, as I said earlier, a really underrated album. Obviously not being a classic in the Stones discography, but I think that this still connects with this similar vibe like they did on the early disco-inspired tone on Some Girls. Let me know what you think of this album in the comments below. I'm going to give Emotional Rescue by the Rolling Stones an 8 out of 10. Thank you guys for watching, and I'll keep you guys posted for more videos in the near future.